The email hit Bianca's inbox like a bullet to the chest. The subject line reading, "Your little camp lie is about to cost you everything." She glanced across the crowded ballroom where Emery was charming a group of donors, her smile radiant but her eyes searching for Bianca in the way that always made the world stop. In that instant, the decade of careful deception they had built together threatened to unravel, forcing Bianca to confront the ultimate choice between protecting their multimillion-dollar scholarship fund for LGBT women and admitting their love publicly in a world that still punished such truths with professional exile. Emery noticed the change in Bianca's posture immediately, excusing herself from the conversation and weaving through the sea of tuxedos and gowns to reach her side. "What's wrong?" she whispered, her hand brushing Bianca's arm in a gesture that to outsiders looked like friendly support, but to them was a lifeline of intimacy. Bianca's mind raced through the implications. The anonymous sender had attached old photos from the camp, images that could be twisted to suggest impropriety back then, when the program strictly forbade romantic entanglements to maintain focus on leadership. If this leaked now, on the night they were launching their flagship initiative, the conservative donors who had funded their rise would bolt, and the board, already skeptical of their close partnership, would demand explanations. As the orchestra played on and champagne flowed, Bianca pulled Emery into a quiet alcove, the city's skyline glittering behind them like a reminder of how far they had climbed from that small college dorm in California. "Someone knows," Bianca said, her voice low and controlled, the ambitious edge that had propelled her to CEO of the Vanguard Education Foundation sharpening every word. Emery's face paled, but there was a spark of defiance in her eyes, the same fire that had drawn Bianca to her 10 years ago. Back then they were just two ambitious undergrads desperate to attend the prestigious summit camp, a gateway to Ivy League connections and future power. The application required professional references and discouraged personal distractions, so they fabricated the roommate story to share a cabin without raising flags. It had worked, but the lie had bound them in secrecy ever since, turning their budding romance into a high-wire act where every public success came with the risk of private ruin. Emery's fingers tightened on Bianca's sleeve. "We always knew this day might come. But we're not the same girls who lied to get in anymore. We built this fund for girls exactly like us, girls who shouldn't have to hide." Her voice cracked on the last word, the emotional weight of a decade of stolen moments pressing down. Bianca wanted to agree, to pull her close right there in front of everyone and finally let the truth breathe. But the cold calculus of survival kicked in. 3 major donors were already wavering after the last board meeting, where Bianca had voted against Emery's proposal to expand the program into red states. One public scandal and the entire endowment, $20 million raised on the promise of neutral leadership development, would evaporate. The memory of their first night at camp flooded back unbidden. The pine-scented cabin in the Colorado Rockies, the orientation packet that warned against non-professional relationships. Bianca had glanced at Emery across the bunk beds and whispered, "Roommates only on paper, right?" Emery had smiled, the kind of smile that promised forever, and they had sealed the lie with a kiss that felt like both rebellion and destiny. That summer they had competed in every leadership exercise, outmaneuvering the other campers with ruthless teamwork, while keeping their real connection hidden behind closed doors. One rival, a sharp-eyed political science major named Vanessa, had almost caught them once, but Bianca had planted a rumor about Vanessa's own family connections to deflect attention. The move secured their spot on the final project team and cost Vanessa her recommendation letter. Cause and effect. Survival always demanded a price. Now, standing in the gala 10 years later, Bianca felt that same calculation rising. "We deny everything," she said flatly. "The photos are old. We were just close friends. The fund stays clean." Emery stepped back as if slapped, her eyes searching Bianca's face for the woman she loved beneath the CEO armor. "And what about us? Do we stay roommates forever?" The question hung between them, heavier than any donor threat. Outside the alcove, the MC announced the official launch of the Emery Bianca Women's Leadership Scholarship for LGBT students. The very program that would have been impossible if their lie had been exposed back then. Applause erupted. Bianca's phone buzzed again. Another email, this one from the board chair demanding an emergency meeting in the green room. Emery straightened her shoulders, the ambitious woman who had co-founded the foundation with Bianca rising to the surface. "Fine. We play it your way tonight. But tomorrow we decide what kind of legacy we actually want. She turned and walked back into the crowd, leaving Bianca alone with the taste of iron in her mouth. Every step forward they had taken since camp had carried an invisible cost. The family holidays spent apart to avoid questions. The promotions Bianca accepted alone while Emery stayed in the shadows. The quiet nights when ambition won over comfort. Tonight that ledger was coming due. The green room smelled of fresh coffee and tension. Board chair Richard Harlan, a silver-haired conservative donor whose family foundation had seeded their first million, waited with 2 other members. "We've seen the photos," he said without preamble. "Explain." Bianca's mind spun through scenarios, each one ending in lost funding. She chose the path that had kept them alive for a decade. Controlled half-truths. Emery and I roomed together at Summit Camp because the program paired us for efficiency. Nothing more. These pictures are innocent snapshots of 2 young women supporting each other. Harlan's eyes narrowed. And the fact that you're now co-founders of a fund explicitly for LGBT women, convenient timing, isn't it? Bianca met his gaze without flinching. The fund is about opportunity, not personal agendas. We built it on merit. Behind her calm words, the memory of Emery's disappointed face burned. She had just bought them 24 hours, but the price was another fracture in the only relationship that had ever mattered. By the time the gala ended, the threat had been contained for now. Bianca found Emery waiting on the rooftop terrace. The city spread below like a chessboard of lights. "We survived," Bianca said, reaching for her hand in the darkness where no one could see. Emery let her fingers intertwine but didn't squeeze back. Survived. Not lived. The wind carried the distant sound of traffic, a reminder that the world kept moving regardless of their private wars. 10 years of cause and effect had led them here. Every cold decision to protect the empire had chipped away at the love that started it all. And now, with the past circling like a shark, Bianca wondered how much more they could lose before there was nothing left to save. The next morning, the New York Times philanthropy section carried a glowing piece on the launch, but buried in the comments was a single anonymous post, linking the old camp photos. Bianca stared at her laptop in their shared Tribeca loft, the same loft they had bought with the first big grant but never dared call home in public. Emery sat across the kitchen island, coffee untouched, her usual warmth replaced by a quiet resolve that scared Bianca more than any boardroom ambush. "We can't keep doing this," Emery said. "The fund is strong enough now." The girls were helping. They deserved to see real role models, not 2 women still pretending to be roommates. Bianca closed the laptop. "One leak and we lose the Harlan Foundation money. That's 30% of our operating budget. 30% of those scholarships disappear overnight." The logic was ironclad. The emotional cost was becoming unbearable. Flashback pulled them both back to the final week of Summit Camp. The culminating project had been a mock policy proposal on women's education access. Bianca and Emery had worked through the night in their cabin, papers spread across the bunks, voices low to avoid detection. Vanessa had knocked once, claiming she needed notes, but Bianca had sent her away with a fabricated excuse and then watched from the window as Vanessa walked straight to the program director's office. The next morning, the director had called Bianca in alone. "We've heard concerns about favoritism between you and Emery. Anything you want to disclose?" Bianca had lied again, smooth and convincing. "We're just study partners. Roommates make the best teams." The director had nodded, satisfied, and later that day announced Bianca as project lead over Emery. The victory had tasted like ash. Emery had smiled in public, but that night in the cabin she had whispered, "You chose the win over us." Bianca had held her close and promised, "It's for both of us. One day we'll run our own table." That promise had become their unspoken contract. Ambition first, love in the shadows. Now, 10 years later, that contract was fraying. The foundation's board had scheduled an emergency vote on whether to distance the scholarship program from personal controversies. Emery paced the loft, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. "If we come out now on our terms, we control the narrative. We become the story of resilience, not scandal." Bianca's jaw tightened. "Or we become the story of 2 women who lied their way into power. The media will dig up every camp record, every donor email. We lose the neutrality that lets us fund conservative districts." The cause and effect chain was clear. Their original lie had bought them entry. Every subsequent silence had bought them growth. One honest moment could erase it all. A knock at the door interrupted them. Vanessa, of all people, now a senior advisor at the Harlan Foundation and the likely source of the leak. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her smile sharp as ever. Old friends catching up? Or should I say old roommates? The air thickened. Vanessa had never forgiven the camp slight. She had spent a decade climbing the same circles, always one step behind. I have the original application forms, she said casually. The ones where you both listed separate housing but requested the same cabin. Interesting how memory works. Bianca felt the ground shift. Emery stepped forward, voice steady. What do you want, Vanessa? A seat on your board and public credit for the camp connection. Or I release everything before the next funding cycle. The ultimatum was textbook power play. Use the past to control the future. Bianca's mind calculated faster than her heart could protest. Denying Vanessa meant war. Accepting meant diluting their control. She chose the colder path. We'll consider your request. In writing. Vanessa left, satisfied she had drawn blood. The door closed and Emery turned on Bianca. You're doing it again. Sacrificing us to save the machine. Tears welled but didn't fall. I'm saving the girls who need those scholarships, Bianca answered. But the words felt hollow even to her. The loft, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage built by their own hands. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent to the quiet fracture happening on the 23rd floor. That afternoon they attended a strategy meeting with key donors. Bianca delivered the polished presentation they had rehearsed 100 times. Data on graduation rates, testimonials from first-year recipients, the bright future of LGBT women in leadership. Emery sat beside her, nodding at the right moments, playing the supportive partner without ever touching her. The donors clapped, impressed. But later, in the elevator down, Emery spoke so softly only Bianca could hear. Every time you smile for them, I remember the girl who kissed me under the camp stars and promised we'd never hide again. The elevator doors opened to the lobby and they stepped out separately, two successful women heading in the same direction but farther apart than ever. The board vote loomed like a guillotine. Bianca spent 3 sleepless nights drafting counter-proposals, each one designed to neutralize Vanessa without exposing the truth. Emery threw herself into the scholarship selection process, reading applications from young women across the country who wrote openly about their own hidden lives. One letter in particular stopped her cold. A 17-year-old from rural Ohio describing how she and her girlfriend pretended to be best friends to join the school leadership retreat. The parallels were painful. Emery forwarded it to Bianca with a single line. This is why we started the fund. Not for board seats or donor approval. Bianca read it at 2 a.m., the glow of her laptop the only light in their bedroom. She wanted to crawl across the mattress and hold Emery, but the fear of losing everything kept her frozen on her side. The following day they flew to Washington for a closed-door meeting with potential congressional allies. The agenda was framed as bipartisan education reform, but everyone in the room understood the subtext. Keep the LGBT angle quiet or lose Republican support. Bianca shook hands and quoted statistics while Emery sat 2 seats away, the professional distance they had perfected over years. During a coffee break, a senior senator pulled Bianca aside. Heard rumors about you and your co-founder. Anything I should know before we co-sponsor the bill? Bianca smiled the smile she had practiced in mirrors since camp. Professional colleagues who share a vision. Nothing more. The senator nodded, satisfied, and the meeting continued. Emery watched from across the room, her expression unreadable. Later on the flight home she finally spoke. You lied to his face the same way we lied to the camp director. Does it ever get easier? Bianca stared out the window at the clouds below. It keeps the doors open for every girl who comes after us. Emery turned away. At what point do we become the door that stays locked for ourselves? Back in New York, the board meeting convened in the foundation's glass-walled conference room overlooking the Hudson. Vanessa sat at the far end, her presence a silent threat. Harlan called the session to order. We need to address the perception issue. The scholarship program is drawing scrutiny. Suggestions. Bianca had prepared 3 slides of donor retention data. Before she could speak, Emery stood. I have a suggestion. We lean into it. Announce that the co-founders are in a committed relationship. Turn the narrative from scandal to strength. The room froze. Bianca's pulse hammered. This was the moment they had avoided for 10 years, the moment cosmet irreversible effect. Harlan's face reddened. That would be political suicide for half our funding base. Vanessa smiled faintly, enjoying the chaos she had engineered. Bianca rose slowly, every eye on her. She could feel Emery's hope and fear radiating across the table. In that split second she saw two futures. One where they walked out of the closet hand in hand and watched the empire shrink, and one where they stayed hidden and watched their love erode until nothing remained. She chose the path that had always kept them alive. Emery is speaking from passion, not strategy. We remain focused on the mission. Personal lives stay personal. Emery sat down without another word. But the look she gave Bianca was final. The board voted to table any announcement and instructed Bianca to manage the optics. As the meeting adjourned, Vanessa lingered. Smart move, she murmured. But the photos are still in my inbox. Tick-tock. That night the loft was silent except for the sound of Emery packing a small suitcase. I need space, she said simply. I can't keep watching you choose the fund over us. Bianca reached for her but stopped short. If we lose the funding, those girls lose everything, including the one from Ohio who wrote to you. Emery zipped the bag. And if we lose each other, what exactly are we protecting? She left without slamming the door. The soft click louder than any argument. Bianca stood alone in the living room they had decorated together, surrounded by photos that showed two smiling colleagues, but never the truth behind the smiles. The original lie had bought them entry. Every subsequent choice had bought them distance. Now the distance was becoming permanent. 3 weeks passed in a blur of damage control. Bianca threw herself into work, approving grants and courting new donors, while the foundation's internal temperature dropped to freezing. Emery continued her program director duties remotely from a small apartment in Brooklyn, attending meetings via video with polite professionalism that cut deeper than any shout. The anonymous emails stopped. Vanessa had achieved her seat on an advisory committee and was biding her time. The scholarship applications kept pouring in, each one a reminder of why they had started. Bianca read them at night, alone, searching for the courage she had lost somewhere between the camp cabin and the boardroom. A turning point arrived in the form of a surprise visit from one of their first scholarship recipients. A young woman named Maya who had just graduated summa cum laude from Columbia. Maya sat in Bianca's office, eyes bright. I came out because of you too. I saw how you built something bigger than fear. If you ever decide to tell your own story, it would mean everything to the next class. The words landed like stones in still water. Bianca thanked her and sent her off with a signed certificate, but the encounter haunted her. That evening she drove to Brooklyn unannounced. Emery opened the door in sweatpants, hair in a messy bun, looking more like the college girl from camp than the polished executive. Come in, she said quietly. No hugs, no accusations. Just two women who had once shared everything now navigating small talk. They sat on opposite ends of the couch. Bianca spoke first. Maya came to see me. She thinks we're role models. Emery gave a tired laugh. We're excellent at teaching girls how to hide. The silence stretched. Then Emery reached into a drawer and pulled out the original camp acceptance letter, the one that listed them as roommates. I kept this. Proof that we started with a lie and never stopped. Bianca took the paper. The ink faded but the memory sharp. Every decision since then was to protect what we built from that lie. Emery shook her head. No. Every decision was to protect the version of us that could survive in their world. I'm done surviving. I want to live. She didn't ask Bianca to choose. The choice had already been made in the boardroom weeks earlier. Bianca left the apartment with the letter in her pocket, the weight of 10 years pressing on her chest. Back in Tribeca, she opened a bottle of the same wine they had shared on their first night after camp graduation. The city lights blurred through unshed tears. She had always believed love and ambition could coexist if managed carefully. Now the evidence suggested otherwise. Each advancement had required a corresponding loss. The promotion that kept Emery in the background, the donor dinner where they arrived separately, the family holidays spent apart to avoid questions. Cause and effect, relentless and unforgiving. The next morning Vanessa called an emergency advisory meeting. New development, she announced, projecting the latest anonymous leak. A grainy video from camp orientation where Bianca and Emery could be seen exchanging a private look that lasted half a second too long. The internet is already calling it the roommate stare. Harlan's face was thunderous. Fix this or the Harlan money walks. Bianca felt the room closing in. Emery joined the call late, her video background the plain Brooklyn wall. Their eyes met through the screen, and for the first time in weeks Bianca saw not anger but exhaustion. In that moment she understood. The empire they had built was strong enough to survive the truth, but their relationship was not strong enough to survive another lie. Bianca ended the call and immediately dialed Emery's personal number. Meet me at the campsite, she said. Colorado. Tomorrow. Emery didn't ask why. She simply agreed. 24 hours later they stood on the same pine needle path where their story had begun. The cabins had been renovated, but the air still smelled of summer and possibility. They walked without speaking until they reached their old cabin. Bianca unlocked the door with the spare key the current director had reluctantly provided after a sizable donation. Inside, the bunk beds were gone, replaced by a single conference table, but the window overlooking the lake was the same. I brought the letter, Bianca said, laying the faded acceptance form on the table. And I brought this. She opened her laptop and cued the video of the gala launch, the moment the MC had introduced them as co-founders without once mentioning their relationship. I want to re-record it. With the truth. Emery stared at her, searching for the catch. What changed? Bianca's voice cracked for the first time in years. You leaving? Maya's letter. The realization that every time I chose the fund over us, I was choosing the lie again. I'm done paying that price. The words hung in the cabin where their first kiss had happened. Emery stepped closer. You're willing to lose the Harlan money? The board seats? The political cover? Bianca nodded. I'm willing to lose everything except you. The girls we help. They deserve to see that love doesn't have to be the sacrifice. They spent the night drafting the new announcement together, the same way they had drafted their first policy paper 10 years earlier. At dawn they filmed a short video on a phone, sitting side by side on the cabin steps, the lake reflecting the rising sun. 10 years ago we lied about being roommates to get into this program, Bianca said to the camera. Today we stand here as partners in every sense. The Emery Bianca Scholarship Fund will now include a public commitment to visibility, because the next generation shouldn't have to hide. Emery added softly, love and leadership are not mutually exclusive. We learned that the hard way. They uploaded it directly from the mountain, no PR team, no legal review, just truth. The internet exploded within hours. Positive messages flooded in from young women across the country. Donations from new progressive sources doubled overnight. But the expected backlash arrived too. Harlan called immediately. You just cost us $15 million. Effective immediately, the foundation is pulling all support. Vanessa texted a single word. Checkmate. Bianca read the messages aloud in the cabin, then closed the phone. We'll rebuild smaller. Honestly. Emery took her hand. Together this time. For the first time in a decade there was no calculation, only presence. They walked the trail back to the car, shoulders touching, no longer hiding from anyone. Back in New York the boardroom was tense. Bianca and Emery entered together, hands linked openly. Harlan stood. You've made your choice. The fund survives on whatever donors remain. Bianca smiled for the first time without armor. Then we'll make it enough. Emery added. And we'll do it without pretending anymore. The meeting ended with half the board resigning, but the other half, moved by the video, stayed. In the elevator down, Bianca turned to Emery. I almost lost you trying to save an empire that was never worth the cost. Emery kissed her right there in the mirrored box, the first public kiss in 10 years. You saved us instead. The following months were a whirlwind of rebuilding. The fund shrank but grew more authentic, attracting grassroots donors who valued honesty over size. Maya became their first official ambassador, traveling to colleges with the story of two women who had finally stopped lying. Bianca stepped down as CEO to become co-director alongside Emery, sharing every decision and every spotlight. The cold calculations that had defined their rise gave way to shared vulnerability. They attended family holidays together, answered interview questions about their relationship, and mentored young women who reminded them of their younger selves. Yet the losses lingered. Several longtime colleagues distanced themselves. Conservative universities quietly dropped partnerships. And Vanessa, true to form, launched a competing scholarship program with Harlan money, positioning herself as the neutral alternative. Each time a donor cited optics and walked away, Bianca felt the old instinct to protect Rise, then looked at Emery beside her and let it go. The cause and effect chain had finally turned. Truth had cost them power, but it had restored what power had nearly destroyed. 1 year after the video, they returned to the Colorado camp as keynote speakers for the new cohort. Standing on the same stage where they had once hidden, Bianca looked out at the young faces and saw the girl she had been, ambitious, afraid, in love. Emery stood beside her, their hands openly joined. "We lied to get here," Bianca told the audience. "We almost lost everything by continuing to lie. Today we ask you to do better. Lead with your whole selves from the beginning." The applause was thunderous. Afterward, a shy camper approached. "Did it hurt to come out?" Emery answered gently. "It hurt more to stay hidden." That night in the same renovated cabin, Bianca and Emery lay awake listening to the same lake sounds that had witnessed their first promises. "Was it worth it?" Emery whispered. Bianca pulled her closer. "Every loss brought us here. Together. No more lies." Outside, the stars were the same ones that had watched them 10 years earlier. Inside, the future felt possible without compromise. Was their decision to finally come out as a couple the ultimate act of love? Or the greatest betrayal of their shared ambition? True or false?